It is a pleasure to meet me.
So it's the mid-1980s, and a Hollywood producer named Martin Bregman has a wild idea on his desk, a sci-fi comedy set on the moon. The working title is simply Pluto Nash. The concept sounds like a mashup of genres, a futuristic gangster comedy in space. Now at one point the script starts to do the rounds behind the scenes, and somebody hands the script to Harrison Ford, and they go, "Okay, Mr. Harrison, picture this. It's the year 2087. You're on the moon, and you own a nightclub, and instead of battling stormtroopers, you're battling the lunar mafia. Doesn't that sound great?" Then Harrison went, "Oh, that sounds like a pile of shit." So then Sylvester Stallone gets the script, and they go, "So what do you think of this?"
"Hey, this sounds like shit. I'm not doing that."
So Sylvester Stallone ends up passing on the script. Directors come and go, but in essence, Pluto Nash is that classic development hell project, always on the cusp of being made, but never quite lifting off. Now fast forward to the late 1990s, and enter Eddie Murphy, one of the biggest stars on the planet. By 1998, Eddie's coming off a string of hits in the 90s, The Nutty Professor, Dr. Dolittle, and voice roles in Mulan. He's a comedy superstar, and the idea of Eddie Murphy headlining a sci-fi action comedy must have given some Warner Bros. Executives starry eyes. So they go, "Eddie, what do you think about playing this character? Are you in?" And he's like, and they're like, "Yeah, we'll take that as a yes." Pluto Nash finally has a star. Around the same time, director Ron Underwood gets involved, and he was best known for hits like Tremors and City Slickers. So, one day Rock Entertainment, the company behind City Slickers, sends him the Pluto Nash script. And they go, "I know this movie sounds a little bit crazy and probably shouldn't be made, but do you think you can direct this movie?" And Ron Underwood goes, "Psh, please. I just directed a movie about a crazy woman who adopts a giant gorilla. Of course I can handle this."
Don't you know who I am?
So, the vision for Pluto Nash at this point, a comic book style adventure, kind of a family-friendly sci-fi romp unlike anything else at this time. In essence, Eddie Murphy in space, running a nightclub on the moon, fighting mobsters in a retro future setting. It's a very weird concept, but everyone involved is hoping it'll be the next bigger summer popcorn movie. So it's 1999. The movie is a go, at least on paper. Eddie Murphy's officially attached, Ron Underwood signs on to direct, and the script, well, the script needs work. A lot of work. In fact, when Underwood got the script, he goes, "What the hell is this?"
What the hell is even that?
I knew that the script needed a lot of work. It was merely the latest iteration of a script that Neil Cuthbert had written 15 years earlier. The good news is they think they have time. Eddie Murphy's schedule is booked for many months, so Ron Underwood is going, "Well, at least I've got some time to finish polishing the screenplay." So, Underwood dives in with optimism. He likes the core concept, a straightforward caper just set on the moon. But he feels something important is missing. As he tells his wife, and later the press, "The thing I didn't have in it, which I will always regret, is that core piece of storytelling. I can't say I had that with Pluto Nash, and it was a mistake that I would regret." In other words, the script lacks a strong emotional core or relatable theme. It's a good sci-fi adventure, sure, but what is it really about? So the rewriting begins. Multiple writers are brought in one after another, fine-tuning jokes, tweaking scenes, trying to find that magic formula. The studio is pouring money into these rewrites, literally millions of dollars spent on script development. And here's where things get even more tricky. Eddie Murphy has his own strong opinions about the script. Now, Eddie Murphy is not just the star. He's a seasoned comedy writer/producer himself by this point. And when Eddie sees these rough drafts, he keeps saying no. Eddie kept rejecting the scripts, would bring on a new writer and try again, and adjust. He wasn't responding. 1 draft, 2 drafts, 3 drafts. Nothing makes sense for Eddie Murphy. So, one day Eddie Murphy finally communicates what he wants. In a meeting with Underwood, he goes, "Okay, instead of trying so hard to be funny, how about I improvise my jokes? How does that sound?" And they're like, "Terrible, but we'll go with it."
Not a great plan.
"I want it to be just kind of straight, and I'll bring in the comedy." In other words, Just give me a straight-up action-adventure script as if you wrote it for somebody else, and I'll do my Eddie Murphy thing on set and make it funny. This approach had worked for him in the past. Think of Beverly Hills Cop, originally made for Sylvester Stallone, which Eddie then turned into a comedy classic. So, the team obliges. They turned the script into a more straightforward action romp, leaving deliberate gaps for Eddie Murphy's improvisation and humor. Now on paper, that might have sounded like a great idea, but in practice it was very risky. Now according to Ron Underwood, Eddie Murphy tried his best, but he wasn't feeling that funny. So, months turned into years, 4 years to be exact, an eternity in filmmaker time. By the time the cameras begin rolling, it's the year 2000, and production is marred by a series of headaches. First, there's a tug of war about where to film. Originally, the plan was to shoot in London, but another producer, who isn't named publicly, was constantly at odds with the director. So this producer essentially said London would be too expensive and we should move the entire production to Montreal, Canada. So as a result, they uproot the production, the sets, plans, people all lined up in London, and suddenly they get the word that says, "Pack your bags, we're moving to Montreal." Now at this point Underwood is going, "I don't like this at all." But he doesn't have the final say. Now since Montreal did not have the facilities for a huge Hollywood scale sci-fi film, one had to be built, and this increased the budget even more. Also, Eddie Murphy is not too happy with this move either, and one can even say that this change in mood affected his performance. Underwood said Eddie didn't really like Montreal. Whether that affected the movie, it might have. Also on set, the working style takes some getting used to. So Underwood would go, "How about we rehearse this scene and maybe you can come in and say this and do this?" And Eddie was like, "That sounds like a great idea, but I'm not doing that." Right. According to Underwood, Eddie would not rehearse/block scenes in the usual way. What usually happens, a director blocks a scene with the actors, figuring out where everyone stands and moves. But Eddie prefers to skip that. He lets the stand-ins do the blocking, and then he walks on stage ready to hit his marks and shoot, often nailing things in just a take or two. He'd come in, I'd show him where all the marks are. He's a very bright instant learner, and would perform and would leave. So the atmosphere becomes a bit mechanical. They set up the shoot, bring Eddie Murphy in for his bit, and then they move on. So as the weeks of shooting turn into months, everybody's starting to think, is this working? So Underwood is going, "This actually sounds like a big pile of doo-doo," right? I knew it wasn't. We didn't have that kind of wit and fun that I would want. It was difficult, not really working fully. Day after day he's watching scenes get completed and he just feels the laughs are not coming together. It's not funny. And the thing is, the cast is fantastic on paper. Randy Quaid as the goofy android sidekick, Rosario Dawson as the younger singer, veteran character performers like Pam Grier, Peter Boyle, and Joe Pantoliano in supporting roles. But still something seems off and they can all sense it. So by early 2001, the film is mostly in the can, but Pluto Nash is far from finished. There are extensive visual effects that need to be added in order to create the lunar colony, futuristic vehicles, etc. Now normally at this point the film would be quietly in post-production for many months, but then the internet happened. Ain't It Cool News, one of the most influential movie gossip sites of the time, well, they had a lot to say. Around January of 2001, Ain't It Cool News gets wind of a test screening for the movie, and let's just say he was not kind. In fact, in one online review they essentially said, "This movie is so garbage that the trash can would spit it out."
This is all pretty much trash.
In fact, he blasted the movie in an online review titled, "Pluto Nash should be blown out an airlock." The review's bullet points were brutal. It said, almost no laughs, hackneyed action scenes. Nowhere to be found is the wisecracking Eddie Murphy of Beverly Hills Cop. This is Metro Bad, referencing one of Eddie Murphy's past flops. They even took digs at Ron Underwood saying, "It's hard to believe this movie comes from the same director who made Tremors and City Slickers." So according to Underwood, this was the beginning of the end for the movie. I think the thing that killed it probably the most was the internet word about the film. That got out. I think it was Ain't It Cool News. So now the movie studio is going, we need to fix this. They then ordered reshoots, about 2 weeks worth of new scenes in order to try and improve the movie. But this came at a price. This pushed the budget over $100 million in total. And what made things even worse is that thanks to all the reshoots and everything going on, this movie was delayed by more than a year. The more people joked about Pluto Nash being a bomb before it even came out, the more the studio got spooked, and the more they meddled, which in turn only confirmed everyone's fears. So, on August 16, 2002, a year after it was set to come out, The Adventures of Pluto Nash quietly slips into theaters. And when I say quietly, I mean stealth mode. There was minimal marketing behind this movie. There were minimal ads, no press conferences, and no Eddie Murphy on late night shows hyping up the film. And the thing is, Eddie Murphy had refused to do promotion for the movie. He basically ghosted his own movie, which in turn hurt the movie even more. In fact, Eddie Murphy was essentially MIA during the film's opening, and if the star does not believe in the movie, why should the audience? So as a result, Pluto Nash opens to dismal numbers. We're talking about $2.2 million in over 2,300 theaters. And what does that tell you? The theaters were empty. Then within a week or two, the film flatlined and was taken away from most theaters. So, when all was said and done, The Adventures of Pluto Nash grossed about $4.4 million in the US and only a couple more million overseas. In fact, the worldwide total was about $7.1 million, and those are dismal numbers considering it took about $100 million to make. In Hollywood accounting, that's not just a flop, it's a catastrophe. So as a result, it quickly earned a spot on nearly every list of the biggest box office bombs in history. As a result, Ron Underwood's career took a major hit and essentially ended his run in feature films for a long time. And Eddie Murphy, well, he weathered the storm, but Pluto Nash marked the beginning of a downturn in his career throughout the early 2000s. I don't even say I've had movies that flopped anymore. Anything that you get to actually put on the screen and they give you some paper for it, that's a fucking hit. Anyway, that's it for the video. Have you seen Pluto Nash and did you like it? Let me know down below. See you in the next one.